From the windswept highlands of East Africa, a story unfolds, a saga of kings, faith, and enduring power. This is the story of the Ethiopian Empire, one of history's longest-lasting and most fascinating civilizations. For nearly 1,000 years, it stood as a beacon of independence in a continent often carved up by foreign powers. So, how did this remarkable empire rise? What made it so resilient, and what led to its eventual fall? Let's dive into the epic history of Ethiopia. Our story begins long before the empire itself, with the legendary Kingdom of Aksum. Emerging around the 1st century, Aksum was a major player in the ancient world, a trading powerhouse connecting the Roman Empire with India. They controlled vital Red Sea trade routes, exporting ivory, gold, and spices. Aksum was so influential that the Persian prophet Mani listed it as one of the 4 great powers of his time, alongside Rome, Persia, and China. One of the most significant moments in Aksum's history, and for all of Ethiopia, came in the 4th century when King Hosanna converted to Christianity. This decision would shape the nation's identity for millennia, making Ethiopia one of the oldest Christian states in the world, and creating a unique cultural and religious heritage that set it apart from its neighbors. But, like all great powers, Aksum eventually declined. The rise of Islam in the 7th century shifted trade routes away from the Red Sea, cutting off Aksum's economic lifeline. The kingdom retreated inland, into the rugged highlands. This period is sometimes called Ethiopia's Dark Ages, as historical records become scarce. But this was not an end, rather a transformation. Out of the ashes of Aksum, a new dynasty was forged. The Zagwe dynasty, who ruled from about 1137, are perhaps most famous for an incredible architectural feat, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela. Legend says King Lalibela was commanded by God to build a new Jerusalem in Ethiopia. His workers, supposedly aided by angels, chiseled 11 monolithic churches directly out of the mountainside. These structures are a breathtaking testament to the faith and engineering genius of the era, and they remain a vital center of pilgrimage and a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. The Zag rulers re-established Ethiopia as a devout Christian kingdom, isolated but strong in its mountain fortresses. However, the Zagwe's reign was destined to be a bridge, not a final destination. Around 1270, a new leader named Yekuno Amlak seized power, claiming a lineage far more ancient and powerful. He declared himself a direct descendant of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, thereby restoring the Solomonic Dynasty. This legendary connection, detailed in the national epic, the Gebre Mesqel, or Glory of Kings, became the bedrock of Ethiopian imperial legitimacy. It wasn't just a claim to a throne, it was a divine mandate. For the next 700 years, every emperor would trace their right to rule back to this sacred union. Under the Solomonic emperors, medieval Ethiopia flourished. Emperors like Amdasian in the 14th century expanded the empire's borders through military campaigns, consolidating control over a diverse array of peoples and territories. This was a feudal society, with the emperor at the top, followed by powerful regional lords, clergy, and a vast peasantry. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church was intertwined with the state, owning vast lands and wielding immense cultural and political influence. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient manuscripts in the Ge'ez script and developing a rich tradition of art and music. But this golden age faced a dire threat. In the 16th century, the Adil Sultanate, led by the charismatic and brilliant military commander Imam Ahmad ibn Ibrahim al-Ghazi, known as Ahmad the Left-Handed, launched a devastating jihad, or holy war, against the Christian Empire. Armed with modern firearms supplied by the Ottoman Empire, Ahmad's forces conquered vast swaths of Ethiopia, burning churches and forcing conversions. The empire was on the brink of collapse. In its desperation, Emperor Geladuz appealed to the Portuguese for help. The arrival of a small contingent of Portuguese musketeers, led by Conquistador da Gama, son of the famous explorer Vasco da Gama, turned the tide. The conflict escalated into a regional proxy war between the Christian Ethiopians and their Portuguese allies, and the Muslim Adil Sultanate, backed by the Ottomans. After years of brutal fighting, Ahmad the Left-Handed was finally killed in battle in 1543, and his invasion crumbled. The Ethiopian Empire was saved, but the war left it deeply scarred and depopulated. The trauma of the war was followed by another major challenge. The Oromo Thracians, Over several decades, the Oromo people, a pastoralist group from the south, expanded into the devastated Central Highlands, fundamentally changing the empire's demographic and political landscape. The emperors spent the next century trying to integrate, subjugate, or simply coexist with these new populations. It was a period of intense flux and adaptation. In the midst of this turmoil, Emperor Fasilides made a decisive move in 1636. He established a new, permanent capital city, Gondar. For centuries, the emperors had ruled from mobile camps, constantly on the move. Gondar represented a shift towards stability. The Gondorian period ushered in a new cultural renaissance. Fasilides and his successors built a magnificent royal enclosure known as the Fasal Gebi, a complex of stunning castles and palaces that earned Gondar the nickname the Camelot of Africa. Art, music, and literature thrived in this new urban center. The castles, with their unique blend of Ethiopian, Portuguese, and even Indian architectural influences, still stand today as a symbol of this vibrant era. However, the centralized power of the Gondarian emperors eventually waned. By the mid-18th century, the empire had fractured. Regional lords, or ras, grew more powerful than the emperor in Gondar, who became a mere figurehead. This era, from about 1769 to 1855, is known as the Zamin Mesafint, or the Age of Princes. It was a time of near-constant civil war, as powerful warlords vied for control, with the throne being little more than a pawn in their games. The dream of a unified empire seemed to be fading. It took an ambitious and ruthless warrior to put the pieces back together. A man named Kasa Hailu, who would become Emperor Teludros II in 1855, rose from humble beginnings to crush the warlords and reunify Ethiopia. Teludros had a modernizing vision. He wanted to break the power of the regional nobility, reform the church, abolish the slave trade, and build a modern army and industrial base to stand up to the growing European threat. He was a visionary, but also volatile and autocratic. His forceful methods alienated many, including the British, leading to a disastrous confrontation. In 1868, after a diplomatic dispute, Britain sent an enormous expeditionary force to Ethiopia. Facing defeat, Tewodros took his own life rather than be captured, a final act of defiance that cemented his legacy as a tragic national hero. The task of continuing Tewodros's modernizing project fell to his successors. Emperor Johannes IV defended the empire against Egyptian and modest Sudanese invasions, but it was Emperor Menelik II who truly secured Ethiopia's place on the world stage. As European powers were carving up Africa in the scramble for Africa, Italy set its sights on Ethiopia. Menelik, a brilliant strategist and diplomat, spent years stockpiling modern weapons and unifying the country's various factions. When Italy invaded in 1895, they expected an easy victory. What they got was the Battle of Adwa. On March 1, 1896, a massive unified Ethiopian army, under Menelik's personal command, inflicted a stunning and decisive defeat on the Italian forces. It was an unprecedented victory of an African nation over a European colonial power. Adwa sent shockwaves across the globe. It secured Ethiopia's sovereignty, making it the only African nation, alongside Liberia, to successfully resist European colonization. For people of African descent everywhere, Adwa became a powerful symbol of black pride and resistance. Menelik II also laid the foundations of modern Ethiopia, establishing the new capital at Addis Ababa and introducing the country's first telephone, postal system, and plans for a railway. His successor, Emperor Haile Selassie, would continue this path. Ascending to the throne in 1930, Haile Selassie became a global figure, a symbol of a proud, independent African monarchy. He introduced Ethiopia's first written constitution and sought to centralize the state further. However, his reign was interrupted in 1935 when fascist Italy, under Benito Mussolini, invaded again, seeking revenge for Adwa. This time, they used airplanes and poison gas, and after a brutal campaign, occupied the country. Haile Selassie was forced into exile, where he made a famous, impassioned plea for help at the League of Nations. His words, "It is us today, it will be you tomorrow," proved prophetic as the world slid towards World War II. With the help of British forces and Ethiopian patriots, he was restored to his throne in 1941. In the post-war era, Haile Selassie played a key role in African diplomacy, helping to found the Organization of African Unity, with its headquarters in Addis. But at home, trouble was brewing. Despite his international stature, his rule remained autocratic. land reform stalled, political freedoms were non-existent, and a devastating famine in the early 1970s, which the government tried to hide, exposed the deep inequalities within the empire. Discontent grew among students, intellectuals, and, crucially, the military. In 1974, the ancient monarchy came to a sudden and violent end. A committee of low-ranking military officers, known as the Derg, or Committee, seized power in a creeping coup. They deposed the aging emperor Haile Selassie, who later died in their custody under mysterious circumstances. The Solomonic Dynasty, which had ruled for over 700 years, was no more. The Ethiopian Empire was officially over. The Derg established a Marxist-Leninist state, plunging the country into a period of immense suffering known as the Red Terror, where tens of thousands were killed. This was followed by more famine, civil war, and a protracted conflict with secessionist movements, particularly in Eritrea. The military regime finally collapsed in 1991. Today, Ethiopia is a federal republic, grappling with the complex legacy of its imperial past. The story of the Ethiopian Empire is a powerful reminder of endurance. It's a tale of a nation that, through faith, ingenuity, and fierce determination, carved its own path, creating a unique and lasting civilization against all odds. From the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela to the victory at Adwa, its legacy continues to inspire and resonate far beyond its borders. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more stories from our incredible world.